We are in Final Cut Pro. We are going to learn a handful of things that I maintain will save you hours if you do a lot of work in this realm. I think it could easily save you, at the very least, a lot of stress and a lot of tedious work. You know what tedious is? That's the type of thing we're going to learn a few tips and shortcuts. I'm going to make a slideshow here in Final Cut Pro. Like I said, I'm going to use some techniques that are applicable across multiple projects. But let's make an event real quick, give it a name, and then we've already learned how to import media. So I can either hit Command I can go File, Import Media. I'm going to hit Command I. I happen to have just 7 images on this camera. I happen to know that they're in this folder. You may have to do a little digging to find those, and it's possible that your Final Cut will go right to the right place. It's always a little bit hard to say. I can select all of these by hitting Command A, or I can shift click to select a contiguous that's side by side, or I can command click to select multiples that are not contiguous. We're using big words over here. I'm going to hit Command A because I just have 7 images. Again, I hope that you have more than 7. When we get those into the timeline, again, I have 7. So I'm going to hit Command A because I know that that is all of my images. And I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut to put them at the end of the timeline, or it's called an append edit. APPEND at the end of that word. The letter E will put them right on the end of the timeline. And because these are photos for a slideshow, it doesn't really know what type of video I want to make. It doesn't know if I want HD, 1080. It doesn't know if I want the smaller HD. It doesn't know if I want to try to go big on a 4K. Well, let's just stick with the default 1080p, 1920 by 1080. That's your standard high definition. We can leave all those other things the way they are and click OK. I'm going to take just a minute to make sure that my photos are in the right order. Like I said, that one was, I took that picture out of order. Here's my underexposed, here's my overexposed, here's my well exposed. Now let's talk about some shortcuts. Again, Command A will select everything. This is one of my top 5 favorite shortcuts. I want to make all of these 3 seconds long. I want to control the duration of these photos. Control D is my shortcut, and when I hit Control D, these numbers right in the middle of the screen get highlighted, and I get this little duration indication kind of on this icon right in the middle of the screen. I am going to hit 3, and you see that number shows up right in the middle, and then period is a keyboard shortcut that kind of fills out that number to make it 3 seconds. Otherwise it would have just been 3 frames. So 3 period and then return or enter, and now I have 7 pictures that are exactly 3 seconds long. Control D, remember that shortcut. Next shortcut that's one of my top 5 favorite shortcuts is how do I fit this timeline and my media here a little bit better in the space. Well, I want to shift the zoom of this timeline. I want to shift it so that it zooms to fill, Shift Z. And what that does is it zooms me in as close as I can get without going outside of the screen. Now we're going to do a animation on this picture. I'm going to park my mouse over the top of it. It's kind of important that you as you're working with each picture that you sort of park your mouse over it. I'm going to choose crop. And then from the crop options here, I'm going to choose Ken Burns. Ken Burns is a documentarian, a person who makes documentary films. He's made a ton of them, and he's made enough to where they've named this effect after him. And what it is it's a way to give a little bit of life to a otherwise static photo, a plain, dull, boring photo. And what it's going to do is it's going to zoom out in this case. Here's the start box, that green box, and then over the 3 seconds of this picture, it's going to start inside that green box, and then it's going to sort of zoom out to the red box. And I'm going to click done on that. And you see these little dots up here? That's letting me know that Final Cut has to make a movie. It has to sort of, it's called render. It has to create this movie. And if I want to park my mouse for just a second, count to 3 Mississippi, then that disappears. That lets me know it's rendered now. Final Cut is ready to play this. It would have played it before, but it would have been trying to process it on the fly. If that makes sense, stay with this and you'll kind of understand that throughout the year. I'm going to hit the space bar just to see this one play, and there's a nice little zoom back. That's the Ken Burns effect. I'm going to select this first one that I just added it to, and this next shortcut will save you a ton of time in the future. File this away because you will need it down the road. It's hard to know right now how you might need it, but this is a favorite. I'm going to do standard kind of copy to start with because I want to take that Ken Burns effect and I want to apply it. So I'm going to start by just copying, Command C or Edit Copy. And then I'm going to select all of these. And again, I could select the first one and shift click the last one. I could drag a box and select all of them. I could select all and then command click to deselect the first one. Do you know how to use a computer? Learn some of these things and then you're going to be good at this. You need to be fast at this because time is money. There's my remaining clips selected. Instead of pasting, I'm going to go edit and I'm going to choose paste attributes. And right here, crop is already selected because that's the only attribute really that that picture has that I added. So it already has that Ken Burns crop effect selected, and when I click paste, what it does is it takes that Ken Burns effect and then applies it to the remaining clips. And then you see again the dotted lines because it's having to render this. And if I want it to play back in real time and I want it to play back as good as it can, I'm going to wait just a second for Final Cut Pro to render those. And it'll always wait until I'm not working on the computer to use the processor to render those images. Now the last few things we're going to do are we're going to add some titles and then we're going to add a title slate. Now I've got a slew of titles that you don't have. I've got all these slideshow titles. I've got a lot of things that I've actually kind of bought over the years from different creators. Stay away from these 360 ones. Those are designed for literally for 360 cameras. I'm going to start with just a basic lower third and I'm going to drag and drop it down over the top of this clip and I'm going to adjust the length of that. Now I could, if I wanted to, Command Z to undo. I could select it and hit Control D with it selected, 3 period, and now I've got a title that's 3 seconds long. So you know how to do that. In here I'm going to edit the exposure, and it doesn't really matter how you put it in here, but I'm going to just type exposure there, and then in description I'm going to type, and you can see I'm kind of intentionally going below the screen there, and that's okay. Again, with this text selected, I can, oops, I'm going to move that top one first. With this text selected, I can adjust those and raise those up just a little bit. One thing to note that I do want to show you here real quick, under this view menu, we have this option called show title safe and action safe zones. I really want my text to be inside that, because when I go and play these on the projector, for example, they may get sort of cropped out as it projects a little bit of overscan so that it covers that projector screen. A lot of times it'll push it out just a little bit. Those are kind of a throwback to older TVs, and they don't apply so much in online video. But I always like to do that just for aesthetics. I like a little bit of space around the edge. So I have that exposure, shutter speed. In that case, I can copy and paste. I'm going to select this, Command C. I'm going to use a down arrow, which moves me to the next edit points. I'm going to paste it, paste it, paste it, paste it, paste it, and paste it. Now I can go through and I can fill out that information on each one. In the case of this one, it's overexposed. My text doesn't look very good. I'm going to have to get into the text editor under the face of the text, and I'm going to have to change the color of it on that one. Again, it's selected and I've parked the mouse there while I edit it. I of course can change the fonts and I can do all sorts of things. This one I might want to change to black too, or I can just delete it and I can copy, use the down arrow twice, and paste, and now I've got one that's darker there. Same thing here, delete, up arrow to move to that edit point there, and paste. Now I've got my text lined up, and I'm going to do one more thing. Thank you for staying with me. I'm going to create what I call a title slate. And in order to do that, I'm going to give myself a little bit of wiggle room at the beginning with a kind of a slide that tells my group name, and then a little bit of space between that slide and the actual film. From here, I'm going to use a shortcut that inserts a gap clip. I can never remember where to find the gap clip, so if I go up here and I type this is called gap clip, I can see that it's under Edit, Insert Generator Gap. And the reason I can't find it is because it's so deep down here in the menus, it goes off of my recording screen right now, and that's okay. So I'm going to use a shortcut because I want the option to wedge this gap clip in there, Option W. And I'm going to hit Option W, and now I get this gap clip. Because I know how to control the duration, I'm going to Control D. I want to make that, or double check to make sure that's 3 seconds long. It is. I'm going to use the down arrow. I'm going to Option W again, and then I'm going to Control D and make this one 2 seconds long. And then I'm going to do one more title. In the case of this one, I know I just want the title that's called Centered. And I'm going to, in this case, instead of dragging it above, I'm going to go ahead and put it in what we call the primary storyline. And then this is where I'll put the information that we're calling a title slate. That's what it's going to look like. And then I'm going to hit Shift Z one more time just to get a look at my project start to finish. Again, I'm going to fill out that information for all those title cards, and then I'm going to share it to YouTube just like we did before. Let me know if you have questions. Lots of information here, some good shortcuts I promise will save you time, and time is money.